Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Oh, hey, y'all, it's Gail Trocco and Christina Nelson with Healthcare 911. And what day of the week is it, Chris?
It's, what do they say? It's Friday somewhere or something?
Today we have an awesome guest. Rosalind Sedacca is joining us, and we're going to be talking about children and the pandemic, which, you know what? I'm not a child healthcare expert. I've raised a house full of them, but we're excited to have Rosalind with us.
I am. So I want to hear what she has to say. I have grandkids, so I'm all about this.
Hi there. Good to see you all.
It's good to see you too. Tell us a little bit about your work and where you're located and what your passion is.
Oh, wonderful. Well, my name's Rosalind Sedacca, and I'm a divorce and co-parenting coach. So I work with parents who are divorcing or have been divorced, and I specialize in the parenting equation so that parents who are going through a breakup of any kind get the support they need to protect their children before, during, and long, long after a divorce. And things are especially challenging now, as we all know, because this pandemic has added an extra dabble of challenge for parenting in general, and especially for families who are experiencing breakups of any kind.
Do you think divorce has increased during the pandemic, Rosalind, just based on your clinical practice? Because we know what we read in numbers, and I don't know if it's always true.
Yes, people seem to be in agreement that divorces have increased, and I think there's going to be an even bigger surge once the legal offices are open and the courts are open again. A lot of people have been dealing with being stuck together and finding out that this is not working for them. And so there's definitely been a huge upsurge in divorce.
Well, how are children, from your experience, picking up on this information if the parents maybe haven't told them they're divorcing, or maybe even what some of the issues are, in the marriage, in the home?
Yeah, good question. Well, children have always relied on other children, friends and schoolmates, to get information. And this is compounded now because of social media. There's so much misinformation that children get access to via social media because of these so-called influencers who really are people with large followings. Doesn't mean they know anything more than anyone else, but they're popular and they have opinions. And then even more important are the influences that they read about. So the influencers and the influences that they're seeing from Hollywood celebrities and other things in the news create opinions about what divorce means. And of course, a lot of it is erroneous information, but it makes it very frightening, even more frightening for children of any age to find out that their parents are suddenly getting a divorce.
So what you've seen and I'm going to say over the last 12 months, because we're more than 14 months into the pandemic, how has it impacted children nationally in the U.S. and then globally?
Yeah. Well, the biggest impact is the insecurity about their feeling about the world and their safety in the world. When you and I were growing up, we had challenges of bullying and schoolwork and parents and discipline, but we weren't thinking about safety and security in the same way that kids today are. They know people in families who have been very ill or died, and they hear about the statistics, and it's a very scary thing. The word pandemic is something, whoever thought about talking about such a thing? So there's insecurity about life in general, about
Mm-hmm.
their safety in the world. There's fear about the future. What does this all mean? And what's going to happen to me the end of this year, next year? Will I graduate from school? What's going to be happening in the future? And a lot of times this will lead to depression about a comparison with how things used to be, what's lost. And there may be many things in their lives that have been lost economically and emotionally and socially with friends. So it creates great anxiety and stress in life, more than kids normally have.
So are you directly involved with providing any support to children as they're going through the divorce? Do you actually see the family as a group in your clinical practice?
No, I speak to the parents.
You speak
So
to the
I
parents.
educate the parents so that, because no one knows your kids better than you as a parent. And what we want to do is give the parents the best advice they can get so they make the best decisions on behalf of the children. And of course, the parents are torn in this very challenging situation. A breakup in the family is emotionally very devastating, whether you initiated it or whether it happened to you as a spouse. And so they're dealing with the normal challenges of a divorce. And then on top of it, they've got these issues with kids who are feeling concerned, anxious, and depressed, just being home and out of their normal routines. So it's a perfect storm for a lot of family challenges. And we have to focus on good communication skills and reminding the parents that they need a break, that they need support. And even if it's phone support, even if it's video support, to reach out, because you can't always do this alone.
So did you come up with any new strategies that you feel like were pandemic oriented that has helped you with your counseling during the pandemic? I know some of the things I do for patients have changed.
Yeah. Well, definitely reminding parents that everyone needs to feel heard and valued and acknowledged. And so listening to your children more than ever before is very, very important. What are your children saying? Don't dismiss it.
Right.
Pay close attention to what they're saying, to how they're feeling. And don't just poo-poo it and say, oh, that's no big deal, you'll get over it, and pretend that it isn't real, because it's real for them, even if it doesn't make total sense for you. And you want to encourage them to talk to you and communicate and be forthright. So they have to know that they could talk to you without being judged. When something as dramatic as a divorce happens, children will often take sides. They'll have feelings about mom or dad or whoever is raising them, and they'll voice their opinions about things. And there's has to be a way of hearing and listening and allowing them to vent, and at the same time not letting them run the show, and reminding them that this is a very complicated issue between two adults, and it's too difficult for children to understand. Even older teens can't fully comprehend the complexities of adult relationships. If they could, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in, because we can't figure it out ourselves. So it's not fair for kids, and yet kids will try because they will blame themselves. A lot of times children will feel, maybe if I behaved better, maybe if I didn't get a bad grade on my report card last month, maybe if I didn't speak back to mom or dad and do something that got them very upset. Sometimes parents are fighting about the kids, but the kids need to understand it's never their fault. The children are always innocent, and they need the comfort of hearing that very, very often, because they have a tendency to blame themselves, and they also have a tendency to try to fix things, and we know they can't.
Yeah. Well, I went through a divorce many years ago, and it was very hard. It actually dragged out in court for 5 years, not because I was fighting and I was ready to sign it and give it to him and set him free. And that's really hard on kids when somebody's fighting for money or a car or the house. And, they're worried about, well, where are we going to live? Where am I going to sleep? There wasn't any of
Right.
that at my house. It was just the financial stress of, paying an attorney so much money every
Mhm.
year to fight the divorce. And I don't really think that's fair to the kids for people to do that.
Well, that's one of the biggest mistakes parents make. All professionals are in agreement about the fact that conflict is the worst thing that children can be exposed to. Even children in a marriage that isn't breaking up, when children are exposed to fighting and anger around them, it hurts them. It emotionally scars and wounds them. It confuses them, and they don't know how to make it right. And of course, they can't. So it does a lot of psychological damage. We also want to make sure that we are never dishonest with the children. So we don't tell them adult information, because even teens can't understand adult information. If they can't fix it, then they don't need to be privy to it. Yet, on the other hand, using child-related, age-appropriate language, we want to talk to them and not tell them lies, because they'll hold us accountable when they're grown adults and say, you lied to me, you said this or that, that wasn't true. And equally important is we never want to put down the other parent to our children in any way. We don't want to be fighting in other rooms or on the phone, talking to friends or neighbors, rolling our eyes, talking about that jerk. The kind of things that we feel justified doing sometimes because we're so angry. But when kids see it and when kids hear it, it really wounds them in ways that can't be fixed very easily. So we want to be very careful about never putting down their other parent, because kids feel innately connected to both parents. They love them. And they don't want to feel, maybe you'll divorce me if I don't behave well.
Right.
It's a frightening thing.
How do you help parents? I think fear, I love that word that you just used. Throughout the divorce process, fear is a very much underlying emotion. From the time you find out you're going to go through a divorce until, it gets to the courtroom and even thereafter for the kids being bounced back and forth. How do you think fear has impacted kids in the pandemic?
Well, the fear of the unknown is one of the biggest fears for all people, for all human beings, and for children who don't have the life experience of going through things, anything nearly like this. It can grasp them in ways that we can't even comprehend. We all know kids are afraid of monsters in the room and under the bed and those kinds of fears. Well, think of magnifying it in ways when they're talking among themselves about the pandemic and what they can be telling one another. So the fear of the unknown is very significant. And what we want to do as parents is talk to them, give them permission to share what they're feeling, and then talk about it and give them information that's more scientifically based, that's truthful, that's honest, and let them know that they can go to you, to loved ones in the family, for comfort and support and solace, because that's what they need. Security is the most important factor for a child in life. When you take away security, everything else falls apart for them. And so they want to feel that life is still okay, that things are going to move ahead, that there's going to be a future, and that their parents are taking care of that, looking into it. So whether it's the pandemic or whether it's a divorce, we want to really trust that the parents are taking care of it and making sure that the issues are being addressed, and encourage our kids to talk to us. So we want to be very alert for changes in behavior, especially now. Look at your child's behavior. Again, no one knows your child the way you do. Are they behaving in different ways? Are they being more aggressive, acting out, testing the waters, bullying other kids? Or are they turning inward and becoming much more reclusive and doing less, forgetting their friends, and sort of moving it very introverted? Are they regressing age-wise, bedwetting, or behaviors that they hadn't done for many years? All of those are signs that the kids are having emotional distress. And the sooner you catch that and talk to a professional, a counselor, a coach, a school guidance counselor, whoever it may be, to get some advice and find a support group, then the better the children will be. And remind them that they are not alone. We are all going through this. Their friends and family members are frightened too. And this is an unknown that is different and new for everyone. So let's all go through this together as a family. And that reminds me that we want to always tell our children that despite divorce, we are still a family, and your parents will always be your parents. Even if the homes change, the environments change, certain other conditions change, we will always be a family, and you'll always be loved by your parents. And that's very, very important and supportive for children to hear and understand.
I think one controversial topic in a lot of families around us right now is whether or not 12 and up should get the COVID vaccine. It's available, nationwide now to everybody ages 12 and up. And there are ongoing pediatric clinical trials, in most major cities for the COVID vaccine. How do parents talk to their kids about the COVID vaccine? I'm a nurse, I got the shot as soon as I was able to get it for my safety and patient safety. But how do you talk to these 12-year-olds and teens about getting a COVID shot?
Right.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Fortunately, there is information that one could access on the web about ways to talk to kids about it, where children age information is available so that you could read that together and have a discussion. It's good to bring your kids in on a discussion, reading about the science, asking questions to one another, and then making a decision together as a family. Ultimately, mom and dad always have to make the final decision, but it's good to include your kids in conversations, get their questions, especially find out what their fears and apprehensions are, and see if you can access information that makes everyone feel more calm. From my understanding, this vaccine, the major components of it are not dramatically new and different. So that's why it was able to get produced so much more quickly, to go through the steps. And so there's comfort in knowing that this is something that's based on a long history of success. But this is something that, family conversations are always valuable in the long run, because kids need to feel included, heard, validated. Even if you disagree with them, you want to still allow them to feel that what they say and ask matters, and it gives them a sense of self-esteem that they're important in our family.
Right. What are you going to do if you've got somebody going through a divorce talking about this COVID vaccine, and you've got one parent that is an extreme anti-vaxxer? And, I just don't know what that conversation would sound like.
Yeah, it's a really tough conversation. There's no easy answers for those kinds of things, especially since it's become so politically connected as well, which is a terrible, terrible shame. So what we need to do with all parents is heighten our communication skills. So when we speak to each other, we speak as respectfully as we can, and we try to focus on facts and information as much as we can. And again, validating what you're hearing the other person saying, even if you have a different viewpoint, because when we dismiss other people offhanded, then it puts them on the defensive. And then it's not what you're fighting about that matters. It's the tone of voice, it's the attitude, and then you're fighting on another level. So what we want to do is fight as cleanly as you can, disagree, or communicate as cleanly as you can, so that the conversation stays on the right track. And that's very important with co-parenting as well. You want to catch your co-parent doing something right, because if every time that you only speak and you're saying, look at the way you messed up the kids. You didn't do this, you forgot that, and have complaints. Then if it's constant, your partner is going to turn you off, your co-parent, and you're going to be fighting for decades to come, because when you divorce with children, it's a lifelong experience. Right. So you want to find ways of saying, hey, thanks for doing me a favor. I really appreciate it. What can I do for you? And be flexible as much as possible.
Well, I got to interject real quickly. One of the things is, this shot, as we want to call it, it's horrific how these kids are going on social medias and stuff, and all the conspiracy theories, even with the children on TikTok, talking about how bad the shot is and don't take the shot and look, a magnet sticking in my arm, just all these different conspiracy things. And so it's scaring the fire out of these kids. Okay. So they don't want to get shot. Well, what happened back in the day when I was 8 years old and the Hong Kong flu hit, and we all were forced to take the bile under our tongues. They put it under our tongue. And I remember standing in line for hours with my grandparents and my mom and dad. We didn't have a choice. We got it.
Yes.
What is the deal today? What has happened?
I know. Well,
we can't just say, okay, kids, you're going to get shot. Put up and shut up. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
What happened?
And I had the same thing as a child with the polio vaccine, and
right.
So quickly the polio disappeared, and it was the most frightening thing growing up in that era. So we have a history, right? We have a history of very successful experiences with this. If people are just going to look at facts, unfortunately, it's become. People have their own facts, and it's not based on science, and that's very, very sad that it's gotten so distorted.
It's horrible.
But we need to remind our children and take them to the place where they could read something factual versus something that's a conspiracy theory or made up, and show them the difference, because it's important as parents that our kids become aware, conscious learners and readers. Right. And not just buy into any whim that they see. So this may be a wonderful educational opportunity for all parents to really sit the kids down and say, listen, there's facts and truth, and then there's things that are just made up and they're not based on anything. And you have to discern that.
Well, I think it's good for the audience to know that the vaccine is more readily available now in general practitioner offices across the U.S. Everybody doesn't have it, but they will be getting it. Your local hospital clinic. So, like the pediatrics group at Emory Healthcare in Atlanta, they now have the COVID vaccine. So, you can make an appointment with your pediatrician and take your 12-year-old or teenager in and let them talk to their pediatrician. That's somebody that kids are smart now.
Yes.
They're very smart. TikTok's educated them all, but I think that may be a time to even involve them in their own health care to talk about the COVID vaccine and the pros and cons of it. And I think that pediatrician might be a big support for the family.
Absolutely. I agree.
I do too.
And, they want to get back to school. They want to get back on the playground. They want, in this summer, people are going to want to travel to Disneyland or, Dollywood and do those things. And I think it's important for the kids, if they are not immunocompromised and that they have the opportunity to be offered the vaccine.
It's a wonderful relief. You feel so much better knowing that you have that sense of security.
And I think that would be I think that would be a comfort to parents going through divorce, Rosalind, to handle it in that educated manner. And, my oldest son had a gastroparesis growing up, so he was on a feeding pump for 18 hours a day.
Wow.
So he graduated from high school. So he was very involved in his health care, from the time he was in fourth grade on to adulthood. And, well, when are we going to do this little minor surgical procedure? Well, what's the scar going to look like? He'd want to know. So, he was right there and involved with the plastic surgeon or GI surgeon or whatever procedure he needed to undergo. He had an option. Sometimes it was me making that final decision. If it was time to change out a jejunostomy tube, for example, if he had a lot of infections. But I think involving them more and giving them more information just helps them be a better person to manage their own health.
I agree with you about that. And this situation is a perfect opportunity to really bring your kids into the understanding of the complexity of making decisions and the resources that are available to help everyone in the family do that. So this is great. And I agree that kids are very, very smart. We can't underestimate them. That's why we don't want to play games with them, because they'll hold us accountable when they're grown.
Right.
What do you say for parents that have the tendency to lecture instead of listen? You know, it's either their way or the highway, my kids would say.
Yes. And that's a great question. Again, it's very important that we understand that people don't learn through being scolded or lectured, that we really need to let our kids have a voice, express what they're feeling, and then we can agree or disagree, but we're not invalidating them. We're not just sending them aside and saying that what they think or believe doesn't matter, because that's going to alienate the relationship with your child. And you want to develop a really respectful relationship where your children trust you, like and respect you. So be alert to their moods and their behavior, and acknowledge what they're feeling. Even if you don't like what they're saying, be willing to say, I don't agree with that, and here's why, but you have the right to your feelings, so that when you treat them more as an adult, they will step up and behave more like an adult. And another thing that's good to keep in mind as a parent, if you find that you've made a mistake in any facet of parenting, be willing to look your child in the eye and apologize and say, Mommy didn't understand. Mommy made a mistake about that. I wish I hadn't decided that. Can you forgive me? Because as a role model, your children will look up to you and respect you for doing that. And it gives them permission to make mistakes and apologize too, so that they're not arrogant when they grow up, and they could say, hey, I made a mistake, I've learned, and now I'm going to do things differently. So this is a wonderful opportunity for everyone to really parent in a way where their kids can see them as role models and emulate them, and be happy that they have good parents who really care about their children.
So what serious mistakes should divorced parents and separated parents avoid to protect their kids? Each parent, if they're young enough, they will probably start dating somebody else. And then you've got two over here, you got a couple over there and a couple over here, and the kids in the middle.
Yeah. Oh, it can be a disaster. So we talked about not bad-mouthing the other parent.
Right.
We talked about not exposing them to conflict. Another important mistake to avoid is using your kids as spies. It's so tempting to say, what did daddy's girlfriend say? Where did daddy take you for dinner? Now, some of it is casual conversation, but other times your kids, because they're smart, know when they're being prodded, when they're being provoked, and when they feel uncomfortable because they know that one parent or the other is looking for information, for dirt from the other parent. And the kids feel guilty. Who do I protect? Who do I take care of? We don't want to put our kids in a situation like that. So don't use your kids as spies. Don't use them as messengers either. Your kids are not there to remember that you're going to be an hour late. Because there's scheduling tools, there's texting, there's ways of communicating. It's not your child's place. And some kids who want to get in trouble will purposely get the message wrong and let the parents fight it out and create more havoc. So you want to be very careful. And also, you never want to ask your kids to choose between the parents. If you say, whose house would you rather live in? Well, they're going to feel very guilty choosing one or the other, knowing that they're going to hurt one or the other. It's much easier to say, Mom and Dad are going to talk about this, or Mom and whoever is going to talk about this, and we'll come to a decision, and we'll make a decision, because then they don't feel the pressure of being blamed for that decision. And we want to be gentle with our kids. They deserve as much compassion as possible. Being a kid is hard enough without adding pressure to it.
Yeah. Right.
I've got a question about family members that may have died from COVID, or, I told you I've got a friend being taken off of life support this afternoon. Should children be allowed to attend funerals, go to visitations, go to the meals after the funeral if it was a celebration of life service? I think that's a question.
Good question.
A lot of people ask me because I work with end-of-life patients.
Yeah. So my feeling is that, again, each family, each parent should be making that decision, because your kids, it could be that one child in the family will be fine with that experience because it's a positive celebration of life, while another child may be traumatized, or the ages are different. So rather than having a rule, I would say really it's good for the parents to talk to someone like you, like me, to speak to someone and weigh the pros and cons of the decision and make a decision that's best for your family, because no two families are the same and no two kids are the same. Even if they're the same age, they're totally different. And you want to do what's best for the emotional and psychological state of that particular child.
Chris's father passed away within the last 2 years, and there were children at his memorial service, weren't there, Chris?
Yeah, there was, and that was a good question. My father passed away here at home. Well, not at home, but he was living with us and was in a nursing home for a little while and passed away. And it was really hard on my granddaughter. She loved her grandfather very much.
Yeah.
And of course, she came to the service. 4.5 months later, my mother passed away here.
Oh my!
And she didn't want to come to the funeral. She was, I'm over this. It was traumatic. Now she came, but because she lost she lost my daughter-in-law's mother, my father, and my mother within 6 months apart.
Wow!
So 3 grandparents within 6 months.
Wow!
Wow!
And it was very traumatic on her. And to this day, she doesn't like to come to my home because of the memory.
Wow!
It's
and
really
it was hard on your adult son
It's
too.
been a year and a half.
Sure.
Yeah. Very hard on my adult son.
And it's all understandable. Totally understandable.
Horrible.
Yeah.
She just could not handle it.
So she needs extra support, because that's something that really tears a child apart, and it's very unusual to have that much trauma all at one time.
In one age, 1 year,
Yeah.
And so she it's still traumatic on her, and it's been a year and a half.
Yes.
The last one to pass was my mother. And it's been very traumatic, and I don't know if she will pull out of it, to tell you the truth. I think that death will always be traumatic to her now.
Well, it would who could talk to her at her age and give her a support system, because there are things for her to keep in mind that'll help her.
Absolutely. I wish that my son, who is also, it was a traumatic experience for him, would allow her to do that. Unfortunately, their dynamics in their home and their beliefs, it probably won't happen. So she'll suppress this for the rest of her life, and it scarred her, and it's still scarring her. So, but you're right, it's horrible.
And that reminds me of something that we have to remember, to always put ourselves in our child's shoes, whatever the situation is.
Yeah.
Before making a decision, see the world through their eyes, whether they're 5 or 10 or 15. It's different for every child in different ages. And when we take the time to do that first, it gives us the ability to be better able to say the right thing and make the right decisions.
You're
Sometimes
absolutely right.
Parents don't have enough compassion and empathy to understand that even though children are little and they can't express what they're going through, doesn't mean they're not going through a lot of really traumatic experiences, and we need to be there for them.
Yes,
Rosalind, one thing that I've seen in a lot of the families that I work with over the last year was weight gain in parents and in the children. How are you helping families and kids deal with that? Because it comes into me, every time I see a patient. Somebody says, oh, I gained 15 pounds or 20 pounds over the last year. And it's impacting their self-esteem. That may not sound like something that's detrimental to children, but I think it is.
Oh,
because our neighbor's daughter might have gained 3 pounds. I don't know if she gained any weight. She's 6 years old. And she's, she looks pretty good to me. But she thinks she's fat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and there's so much stigma connected to that as it is, without the the pandemic being on top of it all.
Right.
We have to talk health and well-being and healthy habits. I try to exercise, and I did a lot of virtual exercise on YouTube classes because I couldn't go to the gym, which I was routinely doing for decades. And so we all had to find alternatives, and a lot of people couldn't or didn't. But now's a good time to refresh and regroup and say, listen, this is aesthetic, but it's a lot more than that. This is my health and well-being, my vitality. And again, we're role models for our kids. So if our kids see us starting to walk, get outside again, do various exercise routines, watching our diets again, they're more likely to follow suits. And of course, as parents, we have control over their diet. So it's important for them not to give in to those whims. Everyone was making banana bread the first few months of the pandemic. And you can't live on a diet of banana bread and stay healthy. So this is the spring is a good opportunity for us to all revamp and re-examine what's meaningful.
Yep.
People who were not in as good health were more prone to the virus to begin with, and that alone should remind us that staying in good shape has advantages forever.
Well,
Yes,
I know
absolutely.
we eat a lot. We eat a lot of vegetarian meals at my house. I don't eat steak. I don't eat chicken. Rarely do I consume pork. Maybe in a tamale. So, and Chris and her wife Mary, they eat vegan. Not every day, but a lot of their diet is vegan. So we've learned that, and I think healthy habits are hard to develop. It takes meal planning. It takes making a shopping list. And for busy moms and dads, and with quote divorce on top of that and younger children, I think that's a lot. That's a lot on your plate, moms and dads.
Well, I got to say, and I know this from my own experiences with friends and families, and I've got a lot of friends that have kids. They give them $5-10 and say, "Here, go to McDonald's down the street, go to Wendy's."
No.
I see it all the time. They don't cook it. They do not cook meals and sit down at 6 o'clock and have dinner anymore. Nobody that I know. I'm like, what happened to that?
Our guest last week, Dr. Tammy Singleton, said, and she's a hematologist at a major medical center in Slidell, Louisiana. She makes it a point, 6 o'clock at night, her kids are not sitting anywhere else. They're sitting at the dinner table.
That's what we did.
If they had to buy food and bring it home, they're sitting at the dinner table as a family eating a meal every night, at least 4 nights a week.
That's rare. Very rare.
Well, routine is so important in parenting. And the routines you set up for your kids, they're more likely to follow through when they grow and have their own families. So having routines like that, sitting down at the dinner table and having a real dinner, a real meal, a meal that you cooked, is just a wonderful thing for your kids to experience and to remember and pass along. But if they had no experience with home-cooked meals and all they're getting is fast food most of the time, how likely is it that they're going to do any different when they're parents? And that's a shame.
It is. It is a dying thing. I don't see that in my group that I run with. They're all younger people, and they work, both parents, and they eat a lot of fast food, and they do not have 6-7 o'clock dinners. My generation, and when I was raising mine, 6-7 o'clock was dinner time. When those street lamps went on, you better be in the house and get ready to eat dinner. Because I will find you and beat your butt all the way in the house. But those days are gone, okay? Because that's child abuse now. But I'm serious. They knew. The minute those street lamps start coming on, you better be home because it's dinner time.
That's right.
That's gone.
We still eat dinner as a family, even if with my schedule, maybe we have to go out to eat, but it's not fast food. We're going to walk in somewhere and sit down.
Right.
And
we did that on Friday.
It's still that
night.
family around the dinner table.
Right.
And I just want to encourage parents to do that because, Rosalind, don't you think building memories and traditions as the kids are growing up, you just mentioned that's critical. to them building their parenting skills as a child.
Such an important point. Yes. Building those memories and focusing on them so you have positive things to remember, because everyone has ups and downs in their childhood. But when you have a few of those positive experiences every week, they stay with you, and you're more likely to follow up and do the same thing with your families, because you have those good memories, and nostalgia is very meaningful for families. So I agree.
Yeah.
One of the things we did a lot growing up when I was a child, and even now, is fishing. And fishing at, a local lake, pond, or, we live in a rural area, that's free. A fishing pole, you can buy one for probably $12 at Bass Pro Shops. Take the kids fishing, get them some fishing worms at the local tax store, let them throw it out there. I think fishing is underestimated for the relaxation and the fun that people have when they spend that 2 hours out by the water.
Now my son is a professional fisherman, so that's how much we fished.
Whoa.
We did that though because we didn't have a lot of money, and like you said, that was almost a free sport.
Yes.
I mean, a bucket of worms cost $1.25.
Yeah.
We fish all day, so that's what we did. But we fished. You're right.
We did a lot of fishing. Yeah, we did. I think another thing that's, I don't know if Rosalind, you're in a beautiful area there in West Palm Beach. I like gardening, even in, we have a house. I have a house near the airport too, and we have a garden outside. It's very small. It's almost like a courtyard. I think that's something else that's really healthy for families to do with their children.
Very much so. I agree. And I've had gardens for years and years for that very reason. And it's also good for them to experience what growth is and understand that food does not come off of a shelf, but there's a process of what happened before it got there. And it's good for them to understand the life energy and all that goes into everything. So there's more appreciation for it. When you eat a piece of fruit or a vegetable that you grew, you definitely have much greater appreciation for the taste and all the energy that went into it.
I tell you, and we instilled that in my family, and also that was a survival thing. And we were very much about, you don't know what the future holds, so you need to know how to survive. There may not be a grocery store 30 years down the road. We don't know.
Right.
So we taught our kids that, and my son gardens. He, of course, fishes. And it's all about the outdoors. And if something was to happen, he could survive. But he appreciates it because we raised him that way. And he's raising his daughter that way. So, yeah, I think it's great. I do.
Rosalind, what would be your best piece of advice to parents of kids in the pandemic and themselves, from this past year, and as we're hopefully at some point over the next few months coming outside of the pandemic?
Well, wow, that's a big question, an important one. One, to remember that you are role models for your kids. Everything you do, every decision you make, you are modeling for your children how to handle conflict, how to handle difficult situations. This is one of the most difficult life situations any parent can be facing today.
Yes.
And your kids are watching and learning. So are you staying centered and calm? Are you making wise decisions? Are you using the time and the resources to keep the family in a tighter loop? There's so many things that they're learning from you. So try to be the best you can and reach out for help and support, because online there's a lot of help and support. You don't have to physically go anywhere to get coaching or therapy or group support and things like that. And also pick your battles with whether you're married or whether you're have a co-parent after a divorce. Be really clear about, is this worth the hassle and the aggravation, or should I just wait until there's something that's really important that's affecting my children, and stop micromanaging my other partner or my co-parent? There's a time for just letting things slide, and there's a time for stepping up and saying this is very important, and you need to know the difference. And one more thing I'd say is ask yourself how my kids are going to react to how I handle this situation when they're grown adults. Sometimes that stops us in our tracks from making silly mistakes, avoidable mistakes, or doing something out of the wrong motive, being too angry, being resentful. Our ego is hurt. We want to wound the other parent. And so we make a decision that wouldn't necessarily be in our child's best interest. This isn't the time for doing that. It's never a time for doing that because your child pays the price. So we want to be really careful and thoughtful and monitor what we're deciding to do, hold ourselves accountable, because as I've said a few times, our kids will certainly hold us accountable when they're grown.
Rosalind, I know you have a free ebook giveaway to the audience. We have a large audience on Facebook. We have a lot of folks that download the podcast once it's out on all the podcast platforms, iHeartRadio. Tell them what you got to give away.
Yes, it's called Post-Divorce Parenting, Success Strategies for Getting It Right, and is filled with the kind of information we were talking about today to help parents before, during, and long, long after the divorce. If you have children, then you want to get these strategies so you could give your kids the best possible outcome, because we know you love and care about them.
Is this available on your website?
Yep, my website, childcentereddivorce.com. Right on the home page, you'll find it. That's childcentereddivorce.com.
And if people that are listening would like to make an appointment with you, parents that need that divorce support, Rosalind, how can people reach you?
They could reach me at Rosalind, ROSALIND, at childcentereddivorce.com.
I think that's awesome. And I think the free book giveaway, I know people, go to Rosalind's website and download it. I'm always about learning something new, because working in healthcare, I get asked a new question every day. There's no way we're going to know it all. And that's very generous of you, Rosalind. And we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chris, tell the audience how they can reach you.
Sure. Ask Christina Nelson at yahoo.com. Just email me.
And if you've got veterans questions, nursing home abuse questions, Chris is probably the expert at that now. You can reach me, Gail, at medicalbill911.com. And I'm not sure, there's not many facets in healthcare that I don't reach, in the course of 7 days in a week. So we're here to help you. We're here to support you. We appreciate you joining us every week. Next week, we have Dr. Joe Vitale with us, star of the book and movie, The Secret. Joe's been a friend of mine for a while. So, Rosalind, you're bringing us the information on how to make mom and dad and the whole family better. Next week, Dr. Joe's probably going to work on mom and dad and help us all be better people. Do you have any last words for the audience? Anything that you want to walk away and leave that thought in people's mind before we leave today?
If you are involved in a divorce or a breakup, ask yourself this really important question. Do I love my kids more than I may hate or dislike my ex? And make that answer yes, so that you make the best possible decisions on their behalf. And that's the best gift you could possibly give your kids.
Oh, wow, Rosalind, that is awesome advice for folks. That is wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think divorce is the worst thing. Nice. I know divorce is the worst thing I ever went through. It was 20 years ago. I decided not to try it again.
Yeah. I feel you.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, it was awesome having you as a guest today. This is Gail Trico, Christina Nelson, and our wonderful guest, Rosalind Sedacca from Child Centered Divorce. We are so happy it's Friday, and it soon will be 5 o'clock in Atlanta, Georgia, and Longview, Texas, and West Palm Beach. We will see y'all next week on Healthcare 911.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.